In the beginning, there was no sound, only the void. And God said, "Let there be sound."
Mr. Watson, come here. I want to see you.
And the voice of man rang out, and voiceover was born. And God said, "It is good." Talkin' Voiceovers with Rick Sellers and Wes McCraw. The big podcast where we talk all things voiceover. And now, Rick Sellers and Wes McCraw.
Welcome to Season 3, Episode number 5. Today on the pod, we have professional dialect coach Linda Brennan. Webster's defines dialect as a particular form of a language which is peculiar to a specific region or social group. This is our very first time having a dialect coach on Talkin' Voiceovers, and I hope every voice actor out there listening learns a little something about dialects, accents, regionalisms, and sounding authentic when doing characters.
I'm so excited to talk to Linda. She's going to have a lot of knowledge about accents, dialects, how actors change, how they sound naturally. It's going to be fun.
Yep. Our guest today has quite a prestigious career. Linda Brennan, Ph.D., is on the faculty of the American Academy of Dramatic Arts, Los Angeles. She's Voice and Speech Department Chair, South Coast Repertory, Theatricum Botanicum, where she teaches voice, speech, and dialects, script analysis, and directs.
Wow. I feel like I'm in the presence of virtual royalty. She's a doctor.
Yeah. D-O-C-O-R. I don't know how to spell that.
There's one in their accents.
One of them there accents, Lar. Let's get the show on the road.
Let's do it.
Hi, Linda. Can you hear us?
Yeah. How are you?
I'm well. How are you? You know, before we begin, I wasn't sure. Should we address you as Dr. Brennan?
Linda is just fine.
Okay. I wasn't sure. I wanted to make sure that you I've earned my degree and I want to be called doctor, in which case we would.
I am the caffeinated one. That's
Wow.
what you can
Hey,
call me.
join the club.
The caffeinated one.
You have to have the caffeine. You have to have it.
In my opinion, it's death before decaf, but hey, okay. If you
Oh
do
my
you.
goodness. How would we live without our caffeine, right?
I am a junkie. I'd mainline this stuff if I could.
You know what? I think I'm right there with you.
Okay. I have to give thanks to Colette Bennett Sunderman. She referred me to you. We had her on the show and I was like, Colette, I've never had a dialect coach on the show. I would like to. Do you have anybody in mind? And she emailed me back. Yeah, this gal's really, really talented and top notch. And I got your name and I contacted you.
Oh, that's so sweet.
Yeah.
That's so sweet. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you for taking the time to do it too.
No worries. Yeah, I know there was a little bit of a speed bump in my getting back to you, but I teach at a performing arts conservatory, and we all just came back in person, and it's just been going from, sitting at the microphone here in the disaster area called my office, and then all of a sudden we're all back on our feet and we're in the theater and we're moving around, and it's been a bit of a speed bump getting back in person.
Yeah,
I can imagine.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I've got friends who are teachers and such, and they're saying the same thing. It's such a new learning curve, and it's getting back into the real world and the whole thing.
It really is. It's like, what? I have to walk somewhere? What? I have to go down a hallway?
Okay. Well, I know that your time is valuable, so we're going to go ahead and begin. Are you ready?
Beautiful. I'm ready.
Okay, we're all set. All right. Linda Brennan, welcome to the podcast, Talkin' Voiceovers. Let's introduce ourselves. I am Rick Sellers. I am the voice talent.
And I'm Wes McCraw. I'm an engineer and audio producer.
And you are?
I am Linda Brennan, and I am your featured dialect coach for the day.
I believe you're known as the actor's dialect coach.
The actor's dialects coach. That's true. Many of us in this very unique and interesting field go off and get into corporate coaching. Many of us work with lawyers and other professionals, but I really focus my work on working specifically with actors.
So let's find out about you. For the audience, can you tell us what is the definition of a dialect coach?
A dialect coach is someone who is working in the field of voice and speech. So many Many voice teachers will focus on singing or certain types of singing or speech and diction and enunciation, and that's neighbors to maybe being a speech pathologist. But a dialects coach is someone who uses a lot of those principles from those fields to help an actor speak in a different dialect or accent for a role.
I'm sure it comes easier for some actors than others. I mean, are there actors that you've worked with where it's just like, you're just not going to get this, it's not going to work? Or is it usually just, I mean, maybe you don't want to say. I'm not asking for names. I'm just curious how difficult, because to me it seems it'd be difficult to, and I'm not an actor, of course, but it would be difficult to go outside of your normal speaking voice and learn another dialect convincingly enough to play a character on screen.
Yeah, you know what? It's kind of like being a musician.
Okay.
So some people can sit down at the piano and play something by ear, and it's fantastic. And then you find out, what? You don't read music? And then other musicians can play an instrument by learning the technique of reading the notes and developing their technique and playing what is written on the page. So in dialect work, we approach it like that. Yes, some people absolutely have great ears and they can mimic and they can hear a dialect or accent and boom, they can do it right away. But we have a lot of techniques and tools that we use for other actors that maybe don't have that facility, and we teach them how to read the notes. So in the speech world, we replicate spoken sounds with symbols, just like in music. Notes and pitches are replicated by those black dots on the page. So we have a whole technique that we teach actors. So even if they think, oh my gosh, I can't do a dialect or accent, I can't do that, by the time they're done with the training and learning the technique, they can do it.
That's a great analogy. I'm a musician, and that makes a lot of sense to me. So you actually have your own sort of alphabet? I mean, notations that they have to learn that first before they're able to utilize your technique, or how does that work?
Yeah. Oh, this is so geeky. It's called the International. It's called the International Phonetic Alphabet. And do you guys remember that that story of Pygmalion, that play by George Bernard Shaw? It became. I got to turn that off. It became the musical My Fair Lady, which is playing here in L.A. at the Dolby Theater. Yeah, Henry Higgins. And he was based on what we think of as a real character named Henry Sweet, who was a linguist at the time, and he used the International Phonetic Alphabet as a tool to help his students with speech. And so that whole story of Eliza Doolittle, she spoke in a certain way, and Henry Higgins and his colleague decided that if they could teach her how to speak, quote unquote, properly and pass her off as
a lady,
duchess at a royal event, then they would win this bet. So the International Phonetic Alphabet goes back to that time, and every symbol in the alphabet represents one sound that the human voice can utter. And we've got probably about 2,500 known sounds that the human voice can make in any language in all the world. And then the freaky thing is some linguists theorize that there are groups of people on our planet that haven't been discovered yet, which blows my mind.
That
to
is
think,
freaky.
Wait a minute, there's like people somewhere like living in some place right now that we haven't found. So we don't know for sure if we found every language that exists, but we think we found most of them. And then we can represent those language sounds by symbols in the IPA. So our students learn the IPA. And then it's a matter of mixing up the symbols to create the different dialect. Just like you as a musician, you've got your notes, right? And you mix up notes to create a song. Well, we mix up speech sounds to create a dialect.
That
Very
is
interesting.
Yeah, that's really cool. I guess I didn't think about that. That's a pretty big time investment then for an actor. They have to learn an alphabet first, correct? And then they come to you, and then based on that, you...
Yeah, well, what we do in our program, I teach at an acting conservatory. So what we do in our first year is we get our students to learn how they speak, right? Because our students come from all over the country and all over the world. So when they want to go out and be a professional actor, if they've got a particular dialect or accent or speech speech pattern that may not work for the role they're going for, we at least want them to know what they're doing so they can fit their voice and speech to match that role. Then we teach them the IPA, and then we teach them how to mix and match to do the different dialects or accents they may need in their career.
Very interesting.
My pet peeve with accents is, you can probably tell, I've lost most of my accent, but I come from the South. And I hear so many, coming from the South, and I know there's many Southern dialects. I hear actors sometimes who sound nothing like what my family sounds like. And I can tell right away, it's like they're doing that goofy Southern accent that's sort of a parody of a Southern accent. But
what part of the South are you from?
North Carolina, around the Appalachian Mountains.
North Carolina.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it's a beautiful country.
Well, that kind of brings me to my next question. There are roughly 30 different dialects across the U.S. Can you tell us some of the major names of those dialects? I mean, I think there's the Midwestern and sort of the Pacific or the L.A. kind of thing.
Oh my goodness.
I don't want to make your brain hurt.
No. Well, my brain hurts already, so no worries. No worries. I'll just take another sip of my coffee. It's so interesting. I tell my students that dialects are like fashion, and fashion is always changing, right? So when I was growing up, the big thing was shoulder pads and spiky hair gel, and now that's not so in fashion, right? But other things are in fashion. So there are general dialect regions in the country for sure. For example, we've got our Eastern corridor. So we've got like Brooklyn and New York, and it spreads out into New Jersey, etc. Then you kind of move up into the New England areas. Then we're moving down into the Tidewater area. Then we've got the Southern dialects. You could go and get a PhD just on Southern dialects alone. Yeah. There are so many, and they're so varied, but they tend to fall into one of two very broad groups, which I'm sure you know. One is called a non-rhotic Southern dialect, where those folks do not say the R sound. So they might say things like here and there.
Yeah.
And then there are versions where they say the R. So they may say things like here and there.
Yeah, my family's definitely in that camp.
Oh, they say the R?
Oh, for sure, yeah. I think the other you're talking about is more like a Georgian type. And then my family is hard, very hard R,
very,
almost like the Irish.
R.
So...
Well, but that's a great point, because we think that that's where that R came from, right? Yeah. The British folks came over and brought that dropped R. So here, there, warm became here, there, warm. And then the Irish, here, there, warm became here, there, warm. I mean, that's just such a gross, completely overgeneralized statement. But there's some merit to it. And then we've got our Midwestern dialects, our Southwestern. And it's so interesting because, talking about speech as fashion again, the Californians used to be considered a group that had no dialect. And then in the 1980s, there were all kinds of unique social things happening here in Los Angeles in the late 70s, early 80s. And maybe this is one of the things we have to take out of our podcast. But one of those things were a lot of drugs by the younger people. And some of the younger people were doing a particular drug that makes you talk really, really fast and get really, really nasal and have a lot of, that. And then there was another group, that were
Stooners, man,
surfer dudes.
Yeah, and that kind of dovetailed in with the rise of maybe you remember MTV and music videos, and all of a sudden things were going viral, right? And there was that famous song by Moon Unit Zappa called Valley Girl.
Oh yeah, of course.
And so that type of speech became really fashionable, and it went all over the country and all over the world. And we never could have known at the time that would influence the way so many people speak now. So if you listen to maybe a broadcaster now versus a broadcaster in the 1970s, the voices are really, really different. And I don't think a linguist could have predicted in the 1970s or 80s how much our speech would have changed to what's fashionable right now. So the dialects are always changing. They're fashion. There are standard dialects, and especially for my students, if they're doing a historical play or they, are asked to do, an RP British or a standard British or a classical Southern or a classical Brooklyn, we teach these dialects as kind of like primary colors, and then like fashion, you mix and you match the sounds to create a voice pattern that would be really perfect for your particular character. So
Correct,
that way
yeah.
they can get specific and not be what you're talking about where, oh my gosh, I watched this movie and they did this General Southern and they didn't sound like my family. So we really try to get our students to be as specific as possible.
Gotcha. Did you always have a good ear for mimicry?
Looking back, no, not really. I started out as an actress like many dialect coaches. And I love dialect work. I love the IPA. You guys are sound people, right? So, and you're musicians. So, you love sound. Mm-hmm. I always loved the spoken voice. I loved sound. And, I got my first break as a dialect coach just as a fluke. And it was a crazy story. And after that, I started getting hired to be a dialect coach. And I thought, wow, this is a lot of fun. I really like this. And
Interesting.
It turned into a career. Yeah.
Are most of the actors that you're working with, is it for on-camera roles or are these voiceover roles or is it a combination of both?
It's a combination of both, some for theater, some for film and TV. And then there's a company out here called Brain Tracks Audio.
Nancy Wilson,
Nancy
I believe.
Wilson, yeah. Oh, Nancy, she's a goddess. And I do some work for her company. So if her clients need vocal coaching or if they need help with a pronunciation issue, I help them out.
Very cool. If you were to have an actor that needed to do like a Northern England accent, would you have to study it or do you have a good idea in your head already how that sounds?
I have a good idea of how it sounds. So what I would do is I'd want to make sure, is this Manchester? Is this Liverpool? Are there differences there? I'd want to make sure if the role required something very specific from a very unique place. I've got a general idea, but I'd want to go in and
kind of tweak it.
Make sure that it was very specific. But the sound, they don't they don't say love and up and mother. They say love and up and mother.
Mother.
I know, mother. And I know how to do the R sounds.
The rolling of the R.
Getting the resonance back, getting the tonality forward and back, doing these upward lilts at the end. So I've got a really good idea of something like that. The ones that I get asked for most often, like a standard British or Brooklyn, those are a little bit more out of the park. But if it's something like, if someone says Northern England, I just want to make sure
what part of Northern England,
this city,
so it's specific.
And historically. Yeah, where is it historically? Who's the character? What's the timeline?
Is it 1908 or is it current?
Yeah.
Interesting.
My students are in love right now with that show, Peaky Blinders.
Oh, yeah. I've not watched it, but I've seen it. I've heard good things. So
you'll be addicted. It is a delicious show for dialects and accents and acting and art direction. And if promise me, if you watch it, you'll make sure that you have time because everything else in your life will fall away because it's so good. You won't be able to
I'll
stop.
binge it. If you are trying to teach somebody how to do an accent, an actor, for example, are the actors coming to you directly or are there agents kind of referring them? How does that happen? How do you get these students?
It's kind of by word of mouth. You sometimes by an agent, sometimes the actor directly, sometimes their acting coach might refer them to me. it might be someone that I've worked with prior, or how we met today through a word of mouth. Yeah.
Very cool. Next question is, I know some of your credits include films such as The Scorpion King, American Pie, Repossessed, Sonny, and I think you did a video game. Were you an actor on that? I think it was Kingdom Under Fire, The Crusaders.
Yes, I was an actor on that. That was a referral from a colleague, and they needed someone who could do about 15 different accents all in one sitting, and they referred me and I did it.
Wow.
And there we are.
Good for you.
I think I was a Scottish vampire and an Italian witch and a British boy, and I was all kinds of things. And later on, a friend of mine said, wow, you really did about 3 days worth of work in one sitting. And I thought, yeah, but it was fun.
Well, yeah, that's because you're good at what you do. That's why it took 3 hours. I mean, if you really had to research everything and spend the time to do it all, it takes, considerable amount of time. How
many accents do you think you do? Do you have a count in your head?
Oh, goodness. That goes back to the music idea. As a musician, I might say, well, how many songs do you know by heart?
Yeah, good point.
And then there may be some songs that you may know a fragment of, but you may need to go back and learn the verse, or you may need to go back and learn, a certain part of it. The dialects that I routinely teach, British, estuary, RP, New York, some version of Southern. And then I do a lot of accent reduction too. If someone has a particular vocal pattern and they're going for a read where their particular habit is not really working for that read. So I do a lot of that as well.
That's something I'm always amazed at, too, when you watch movies from an actor who has no particular accent and you find out they're Australian. And you hear them in an interview and they're so different. You're like, wow, you totally lost that accent and nailed the character. That's interesting to me equally.
Well, as a voice actor, I get scripts in all the time for auditions, and many times it will be for a specific accent or a dialect. And today, it used to be an American actor could do that. You could just pull it off. Now they want authentic only. So you can't do, if you're an American, they won't accept a British accent from you. And it's like, that's why actors are actors. They learn to imitate other people. They learn to become these characters, but you cannot convince them. And with the internet, now you can get a guy from the East End of London or from Belfast to do it if that's the character. So it's tough to compete. Do you find that is happening where they're looking for the actual actor to be from that region?
Yeah, I've definitely seen that, and it really brings up for me a very important philosophical question. I think you touched on it. When you're an actor, that's your craft.
Exactly.
Your craft
you become
is
those
to
characters.
play other people, right? So, and I understand maybe from a production end, it's a business concern. We don't want to listen to 100 auditions of actors who say they can do this particular dialect when they really can't. So let's just cut to the chase and get someone from there, and we don't have to worry about it. I can see that end of it, but I think from the artistic end, this is what actors do. We mimic and
you become those characters that they're looking for.
Yeah.
It's very frustrating when it happens. I'm like, I can do a million British accents, but come on. I mean, I can't even try for it. I know you worked in television as well. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's interesting. Some of the film work that I've done, we actually had a bit more time to work on a particular dialect or accent or have lesson time before there was shooting. Some of the TV work that I've done, I've been on a set where someone will bring an actor to me and say, can you fix this line right now? Can you change this in this moment? So you do have to be rather quick about it. And also, deliver the coaching in a way for an actor to receive it, because when you're in hair and makeup and lights and people standing around and something needs to be fixed right now, it's very off-putting for the actor.
Oh, I'm sure. I mean, television,
So,
the production schedule is so much quicker. You have maybe a week to 3-4 days to shoot everything, and then it's got to be edited, effects added. So if you're trying to teach an actor how to do a specific line, when I work with kids, we do a thing called parroting. I'll read the line for the kid, and then the kid will parrot back as close as you can what I did. Do you work with the actors that way? This is how it's to be said, follow me, and they kind of mimic you, or is it more complicated than that?
That's a great exercise. I will definitely do that. I don't call it parroting, but that's a great term if I could steal that from you.
Absolutely.
It really depends on the actor, and you kind of have to get a feel, especially in a situation like that, of what they're willing to receive. Some actors want to know the how and why of things before they feel comfortable, and other actors will say, look, just tell me how to say it and I'll say it. It really depends on the person. And definitely in a situation like that, you want to help the actor feel as comfortable as they can,
Yeah.
So I really try to just intuit my way through that and feel out what that actor would be most helped by.
That's got to be awkward, because if they're calling you for that reason, the actor's got to feel like, well, I'm not getting this,
There was one show that I worked on, and the actress, they wanted her to do a Cuban accent. And guess what? She was from Cuba.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's awkward.
So they called me in because they wanted a stamp of approval, and I felt so awkward. And I pulled her aside and I just said, look, you're from Cuba. I think you sound great. And she's like, yeah, why did they call you in? I'm from Cuba. This is what I do. And we sort of had a meeting of the minds. And we just said, look, the producers are a little nervous. I think you sound great. You're comfortable. I'll just tell them that I think you sound great. And they just wanted that stamp of approval.
Sure.
So it gets to be sometimes a little more psychological than actual coaching.
Yeah, you're kind of nursemaiding people through it to make them comfortable.
That's sort of any business. Yeah. Sometimes you have to do that stuff.
But my primary work, and this happens with a lot of dialect coaches. I don't know if you've heard of Tim Monick, but the great Tim Monick, he was teaching at Juilliard for many years. And when you are teaching in academia, you're very much tied to your teaching schedule. And he left academia to go and pursue film coaching. And in the last, many years now, I've really been devoting a lot of my time to my academic classroom work. So my schedule is pretty tight, but a lot of it is in the classroom. And then I fill in my coaching, which with Zoom is so great. We can get so much more work done now than meeting in the office. And then I'm doing a little bit less TV film now because my schedule is really tied to my academic job.
Gotcha. The next question I have is, Wes and I are both big fans of 60s television. And there was a character actor named Robert Easton. Are you familiar with Robert?
Bob Easton, absolutely.
Yeah.
I met him a few times before he passed away. Bob Easton was terrific. There was no one like him. They used to call him the Henry Higgins of Hollywood.
Yeah. He was an actor, a character actor, and then eventually became a dialect accent coach. And just an amazing fella. He had a really interesting voice. He normally would play country bumpkins or hillbilly type characters. And he got typecast, but he made a living doing it. And then eventually he kind of meandered over into the dialect thing and taught other actors how to speak and talk like people from a specific region or area. So very cool. I'm glad you know who he was. I'm a big fan of his.
Oh, absolutely. When I started out coaching, I had a couple of meetings with him and a couple of consultations, and he was very generous and very kind and helpful with his time. He gave me some great advice. I really, really appreciated his guidance and his direction that he gave me. And interestingly enough, when he passed away, his family had an estate sale.
Oh, wow.
there were all of his books and all of his dialect materials, and they just filled rooms and rooms. And I, of course, went to that estate sale and bought many of his books, and just to look at his life and what he accomplished and where he had been and what he had done. He was such a prolific artist. And then, of course, bumping into other dialect coaches and teachers who loved him as well. And, we were all there, looking at his things. But I did buy a few of his books, which I have.
Great. I'm so glad you know who he is, and other folks that are doing what you do as well.
Absolutely.
When you're working on script analysis with an actor, can you kind of explain that process? What are you exactly doing? Are you deconstructing that material? Is it commercial copy, or I don't know, it could be theater stuff, film or television?
Well, when we look at script analysis, there's the literary piece of a script that I think it's important, especially for newer actors, to know. And it sounds very obvious, but the theme, what are you trying to say? What's the story? And then we get into the kind of plot. Is it, a comedy or a tragedy or rags to riches or whatever? And then we get into, well, what's your character's story? What is the character plot? And then we get into a little bit more specifics of what's your character's super objective. Who are you as a person? What choices do you make that are within your character? And then what choices might be out of character, so it keeps your character coherent. And then we kind of dive more into the script and the dialogue. What's your scene objective? What obstacles do you face? What actions do you take? And then the piece of script analysis that I really love so much, because I love the craft of acting, is, what are your actor tasks? So many actors will just sort of jump into a role and intuit their way through, and that's really great. But the fun of acting is, well, how am I going to bring this character to life? Am I going to do a substitution? Am I going to do animal work? Am I going to do body work? Do I do kinesthetic work? What are all these wonderful tools that I've learned in acting class? What am I actually going to do here to bring this character to life? And it is a bit academic, but I love that. And then we get into the beats of the scene, the rhythm, the tempo of the scene, and then the moment to moment work, and then the imaginative work. How do you connect intuitively? So we sort of go from the most broad literary piece, the theme, and we go all the way down to, what are you feeling and experiencing moment to moment? So it's pretty fun.
Great. Wow. I think I looked. Do you have a website where people can reach out to you?
You can find me. I'm in the process of a new website right now. People can find me on Facebook. I've got 2 pages. I've got the Actors Dialects Coach. And I recently published a book on stage fright. It's called Stage Fright in the Actor. It's published by Routledge, and we have a Facebook page for that book too.
Oh, great. How can people find the book?
Oh, you can go on Amazon.
Okay.
It's called Stage Fright in the Actor, and it's doing very, very well. And, we found that there really weren't that many books about stage fright specifically for actors. There's lots of material out there for musicians and public speakers and athletes, but there really wasn't anything out there specifically geared toward actors.
That's funny. You think there would be, Yeah,
you would, right? Because stage fright, that's where the name comes from. You'd think there would be, but there wasn't. So it's doing very well, and I'm really hoping that anybody who reads the book will get some help from it, because stage fright is not fun. And I've talked to so many people who started out as actors, and then, because of this really difficult anxiety, they ended up not being actors, and it's really, really not a good thing. So hopefully this book will be of some help to someone who might pick it up.
I've heard comics have a similar situation where before they go on stage, a lot of them will have the butterflies and throw up before they'll go out and perform, and then they're fine.
Oh, absolutely. You guys are real film and TV experts. Do you remember Laurence Olivier?
Yes, absolutely.
Some of the younger actors don't know Olivier, but he.
How do you not know Olivier? I mean, he was like the greatest living actor, or was.
Yeah, I know. Isn't that ironic? But he used to stand behind the curtain and be cussing out the audience and punching the air. He had horrible stage fright. Barbara Streisand as well.
Wow.
That's why she stopped appearing in public and touring. She would only do studio work because she had terrible stage fright. Jim Carrey.
I've heard he has issues with it as well.
Yeah.
I think it's normal for a performer to have butterflies and be a little nervous. That puts you on your A game so that you're ready to perform when you need to. But to have that physical extreme where you're nauseous or have to throw up, that sounds like you need a little bit of therapy.
Oh, yeah. I knew of an actress who was starring in a series, and they had to staple paper bags at every entrance because right before she made her entrance, she would routinely just have to throw up into that bag before she went on.
Well, that speaks a lot to their desire to do what they do, because that would be enough to send most people home. You would just be like, I can't do this.
Yeah.
But the people that persevere and go forward, even though they're that afraid, that's something in itself,
Yeah, well, they're very courageous, to face
I think you
those
have
fears.
to be. You have to have a large amount of courage to get out there and perform in front of a group of people. And be confident in yourself and your ability. So,
yeah.
Linda, I wanted to ask: are you primarily working with union talent, SAG-AFTRA, or are you working with non-union, or a combination of the two?
I would say pretty much a combination of the two. Now in voiceover work, there seems to be a lot of non-union work out there.
A ton of it. About 70% of all VO work is non-union and only 30% union stuff. So
yeah. So, so a lot of people that are maybe need coaching for a particular audition, or they've been told by their agents that they've got a particular speech thing they need to work on, or dialect they need to acquire. I work with a lot of young actors who are in training in our conservatory program, and then actors who are established that I've had long relationships with, and here we go again. We're working on German now, So I'm really fortunate that I get to work with a wide range of people. But I particularly have a soft spot for the new actors who are coming up, to make sure that they've got, that they're confident and they have good skills, and ultimately they can get to the point where maybe they won't need a coach.
Very good.
Do actors normally come to you directly, or is it through an agent, or both, or how does it typically work that they come in contact with you?
Through all different forms. We could have a prior relationship. It could be through their agent. It could be through word of mouth. Mm-hmm. They come to me. Well, just how we met. Sometimes it's just word of mouth and serendipity and what's meant to be.
Very cool. I was watching Elia Kazan's Streetcar Named Desire on TMC the other day, and watching Brando doing his Stanley Kowalski. And when I was listening to him speak, I thought, he reminds me of a character. And then I realized he sounds a bit like Larry Fine from the Three Stooges. If you can imagine that. Hey, Mo, what are we going to do now? Stella! He's kind of got that quality. And yeah. I thought, I can't believe Brando and Larry Fine have anything in common, but it was interesting for me as a kind of a mimic to kind of hear those two voices and equate them together in the same sort of an idea. I'm like, that's crazy, but they do sound very similar.
Well, who knows? Maybe Brando had that voice in his ear, and maybe that informed what he was doing. I mean, you never know. I mean,
you never know.
When I'm teaching, I'll be talking about something, and then I'll get a voice in my head, and then I'll say to my students, "Hey, did you see this or did you see that?" And I think that, that's part of the creative process when we're using our voices or we're acting. We've got different images in our heads or voices, and I think we kind of mix and match from everything that we've been exposed to, even people in our family or people that we know. So who knows? Maybe Maybe that
he
was in
watching
Brando's mind somewhere.
Yeah, he was watching a Three Stooges marathon and went, I got to talk like Larry Fine from the Three Stooges. So anyway,
that's beautiful.
You have been a great guest. We really appreciate it. I know you have limited time. Do you want to go ahead and tell us about your social media? You're on Twitter. You're on Facebook.
I'm on Twitter. My handle is Acting Demon. I'm on Facebook, Stage Fright and the Actor, and the Actor's Dialect Coach. And
Very
those are
good.
the best places to reach me.
And people can find your book on Amazon.
On Amazon, absolutely.
And every actor out there should order a copy today.
Oh, I appreciate that so much.
I like that you're Acting Demon. I like that.
Yeah, very cool.
It came out right as lockdown happened last year, and I had some book tours and things that got canceled, so it had a bit of a slow start, but it's doing really well. So
good for you. Best of luck with that. That's
well, thank you so much.
That's a great topic for a book, and I'm surprised there aren't more of them. So good for you for finding that niche.
Great. All right, Linda. Well, thank you so much for your time. You've been very generous, and we love it, and a wealth of information.
Oh, it's been really great to talk to you. Thank you so much for having me. And,
we'll send you
everything be great for you.
Yep. When the link or when the podcast goes live, we'll send you a link. I'll email it to you, and you can check it out and enjoy it. Okay?
Fabulous.
Thank you so much.
Great to meet you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Have a good day.
Wow, she was an incredible guest, very knowledgeable, and so gracious with her time. Linda Brennan, we can't thank you enough.
Yeah, it's so nice when someone of her stature takes the time to talk to us. And she had a lot of great information. She obviously knows what she's doing.
Yeah, and go to Amazon and buy her book, Stage Fright in the Actor. It'll be easy to find, it'll be a good read, and you'll learn something if you're an actor.
Absolutely.
Up your game, people.
Right, bring it.
Okay, guys, join us next time for Season 3, Episode number 6 of Talkin' Voiceovers. You know, we love bringing you guys the very best guests in the world of VO and acting and coaching and all that. So be sure and subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Here's Samantha to take you out.
Bye-bye, everybody.
See ya.
I'm Samantha Fagan, and you're listening to Talkin' Voiceovers. Be sure and subscribe to Talkin' Voiceovers. Hit like and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Before you book your next voiceover demo, check out primodemos.com. You'll hear the difference.
Thanks for listening to Talkin' Voiceovers with Rick Sellers and Wes McCraw. Find us on Facebook or on the web at primodemos.com.